It's just so washed out, huh? Like it looks like I don't have any eyelashes or something. I promise you I have eyelashes and you can really tell my nose is crooked. This way. This way. It's crazy, but welcome back. We are going to try this out because my videos look whack. And it's through my phone and I have a laptop, so I'm going to try filming today on a laptop and we'll just see how it goes. Maybe I'll be able to film for a longer duration than 27 minutes or 32 minutes. I'm just going to have to not look at myself because wow. And this is my right side and this is my left side and that is weird. It's flipped. I wonder if we can change that because that do be crazy looking. Anyway, I'm sort of getting addicted to like collecting books and I need to like stop watching anybody's content that's gonna like recommend a book. And I just need to focus on this book. I'm currently reading Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock. There's a great PBS mystery show on PBS called Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman, and it's so good. 2010 to 2017, really, really good. Obviously, the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes is really good. I have about 14 other books that I'm currently reading right now. So it is like, I do want to carry on with this Pride and Prejudice book. So last time, obviously, we got really intense with Mr. Darcy, and he proposed to Elizabeth, which is so crazy. So we'll just have to see the fallout of that and what happens. This is me toward the light. Let's go toward the light. My beautiful roses that my husband gave to me for Valentine's Day next to our red light. So cute. Okay. Chapter 35 of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Jane Austen, I just round out, wrote anonymously because it was illegal for women to make money for themselves. And none of her books were published until she was about to die or after she died. And it's so interesting to think about people who like didn't know their impact. Like if a person can come back today and see like you have a whole Jane Austen, you have a parade every year and like a committee that talks about you all the time, and there's like a whole council of people that talk to you in England and in America. You're so popular. It'd be so interesting if coming back from the dead was possible, but also not. Chapter 35. Elizabeth awoke the next morning to the same thoughts and meditations which had at length closed her eyes. She thought, going to sleep, the same thoughts she thought waking up. That's very sweet. But, obviously it's like, this Mr. Darcy wants to marry me? This is crazy. She could not yet recover from the surprise of what had happened. Yeah, I bet. It was impossible to think of anything else, and totally indisposed for employment, she resolved soon after breakfast to indulge herself in air and exercise. Anytime you're anxious, get some air, go get exercise. Think about things while you're exercising. It's the best way. Move your body, everybody. Everybody needs to move their body. This is great. Jane speaking to us from the dead. Thank you, Jane. She was proceeding directly to her favorite walk, the one that Mr. Darcy finds her on all the time. And when the recollection of Mr. Darcy's sometimes coming there stopped her, right? And instead of entering the park, she turned up the lane which led farther, thank you, from the turnpike road. The park paling was still the boundary on one side, and she soon passed one of the gates into the ground. After walking 2 or 3 times along that part of the lane, she was tempted by the pleasantness of the morning to stop at the gates and look into the park. Tempted by the pleasantness of the morning. I just like writing things down. I also am going to just try to go slower because I love to annotate things. I do read books slowly because I just like, obviously, to look things up and think about things. And it's nice to just not read to finish the book. Slow down. I get it. She was tempted by the pleasantness of the morning to stop at the gates and look into the park. The 5 weeks which she had now passed in Kent had made a great difference in the country, and every day was adding to the verdure, and every day was adding to the verdure of the early trees. Sorry, every day was adding to the verdure of the early trees. Sorry, I have to look that up. Every day was adding to the verdure of trees. Of the early trees. Every day was adding to the verdure of the early trees. What's that mean? What? Women, trees, and the relationship between self and other. Well, oh, there's not much here. Request full text. Oh, I don't want to request a full text. That's some sort of gate kept. There's a whole bunch of articles on it, but they're all like, you have to request this article. Jane Austen's heroines are environmentalists. Jane Austen's heroines are environmentalists, as evidenced by a pervasive dichotomy in her fictional landscape in which nature lovers transcend the eco-callous in virtue and likability. In Pride and Prejudice, the charismatic Elizabeth Bennet belongs to the fields and groves and rarely shuts herself into her own room. Okay, unless confronting with problems. Right. Tone about the room, the green da-da-da. I've never written ba-ba-ba. Rhapsodizing. No, it's not telling me about this. Well, what's it mean? There's not much on it. What's this say? AI overview. Fine, I'll look at AI overview. I don't understand. What does it mean? Okay, hold on. You do not currently have access to this article. Wow, I've got to. A quote from a research paper by Kathleen Anderson who says the paper was published. Okay. I just need to look up the word verdure, I guess. Verdure? Whoa, this is making me go on a quest for knowledge. I'm questing for knowledge. What does verdure mean? The greenness of growing vegetation. Oh. Such vegetation itself, a condition of health and vigor. What is a synonym? Greenery, foliage. Okay, hold on. Let me read it again. Every day was adding to the verdure of the early trees. Oh, things are just blossoming. That's just a really, really fancy way of saying things are blossoming. It's February, I guess. Or maybe spring. It's spring. 5 weeks which did not pass in Kent made a great difference in the country, in the landscape. I see. I was thinking it was making a difference to her. Okay, it's making a difference in the country. And every day was adding to the greenery, the verdure. I'm just gonna learn how to say it because it's a different word that I don't know, that my mouth doesn't know how to say. How to pronounce it. Verdure. What? Verdure. Oh, it's Italian. Verdura. Okay, sorry, that was quite the tangent. I didn't understand what that meant. Every day was adding to the verdure of the early trees. Okay, the trees are blooming. Got it. She was on the point of continuing her walk when she caught a glimpse of gentlemen within the sort of grove which edged the park. She hid behind a tree. He was moving that way, and fearful of it being Mr. Darcy, she was directly retreating. But the person who advanced was now near enough to see her, and stepping forward with eagerness, pronounced her name. She had turned away, but on hearing herself called, though in a voice which proved it to be Mr. Darcy, she moved again towards the gate. He had by that time reached it also, and holding out a letter, which she instinctively took, said with a look of haughty composure, "I have been walking in the grove some time with the hope of meeting you." He wrote a letter. He took all night to write a letter, and now he's been walking around just hoping to see her. "I have been walking in the grove some time in the hope of meeting you. Will you do me the honor of reading that letter?" Oh. And then with a slight bow turned again into the plantation and was soon out of sight. Whoa, you guys. "I've been walking in the grove some time in the hope of meeting you. Will you do me the honor of reading that letter?" Wow, 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 wow. Okay. With no expectation of pleasure, but with the strongest curiosity, Elizabeth opened the letter, and, to her still increasing wonder, perceived an envelope containing 2 sheets of letter paper written quite through in a very close hand. Whoa. The envelope itself was likewise full. So he wrote on the envelope, and then he has 2 more pages that are quite full. Oh my gosh. Pursuing her way along the lane, she then began it. She just started reading it on her walk. Whoa. It was dated from Rosings at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was as follows. Ooh, let's listen to this letter, you guys. "Be not alarmed, madam, on receiving this letter by the apprehension of its containing any repetition of those sentiments or renewal of those offers which were last night so disgusting to you." He's saying, I'm not talking about you. I'm just gonna talk about what I want to talk about. I won't disgust you anymore with my love. Oh my God. "I write without any intention of paining you or humbling myself by dwelling on wishes which, for happiness of both, cannot be too soon forgotten, and the effort which the formation and the perusal of this letter must occasion should have been spared, had not my character required it to be written and read. You must therefore pardon the freedom with which I demand your attention. Your feelings, I know, will bestow it unwillingly, but I demand it of your justice." Oh, 2 offences of a very different nature and by no means of equal magnitude you last night laid on to my charge. The first mentioned was, that regardless of the sentiments of either, I had detached Mr. Bingley from your sister, and the other that I had, in defiance of various claims, in defiance of honour and humanity, ruined the immediate prosperity and blasted the prospects of Mr. Wickham. Wilfully and wantonly, I had to have thrown off the companion of my youth, the acknowledged favourite of my father, a young man who had scarcely any other dependence than our patronage, and who had been brought up to expect its succession, would be a depravity, to which the separation of 2 young persons, whose affection could be the growth of only a few weeks, could bear no comparison. But from the severity of that blame which was last night so liberally disposed, respecting each circumstance, I shall hope to be in the future secured, when the following account of my actions and their motives has been read. If in the explanation of them, which is due myself, I am under the necessity of relating feelings which may be offensive to yours, I can only say that I am sorry. The necessity must be obeyed, and further apology would be absurd. Don't even apologize. Just listen. I just need you to read it, and you don't even need to. Yeah, this is beautiful. I had not been long in Hertfordshire before I saw, in common with others, that Bingley preferred your elder sister to any other woman in the country. But it was not till the evening of the dance at Netherfield that I had any apprehension of his feeling a serious attachment. Okay. I had often seen him in love before. At that ball, while I had the honour of dancing with you, I was first made acquainted by Sir William Lucas's accidental information that Bingley's attention to your sister had given rise to a general expectation of their marriage. Everyone is talking about this marriage, and Darcy did not know. Interesting. He spoke of it as a certain event, of which the time alone could be undecided. Yeah, it is something when people just expect like this event to happen and you're like, well, hold on. Can everybody's like that? I get it. I get that. From that moment, I observed my friend's behaviour attentively, and I could then perceive that his partiality for Miss Bennet was beyond what I ever witnessed in him. He did love her. This is nice to hear. Your sister I also watched. Her look and manners were open, cheerful, and engaging as ever, but without any symptom of peculiar regard. And I remained convinced from the evening's scrutiny that though she received his attentions with pleasure, she did not invite them by any participation of sentiment. She wasn't picking up what he was putting down, and she wasn't like offering the same way that he was. Okay. If you have not been mistaken here, I must have been in error. Your superior knowledge of your sister must make the latter probable. If it to be so, if I have been misled by such error to inflict pain on her, your resentment has not been unreasonable. But I shall not scruple to assert that the serenity of your sister's countenance and air, which was such as might have given the most acute observer a conviction that, however amiable her temper, her heart was not likely to be easily touched. Oh, that's a really sweet way of putting that. Her heart was not likely easily to be touched. That I was desirous of believing her indifferent is certain. But I will venture to say that my investigation and decisions are not usually influenced by my hopes or fears, okay? I did not believe her to be indifferent because I wished it. I believed it on impartial conviction, as truly as I wished it in reason. My objections to the marriage were not merely those which I last night acknowledged to have the utmost force of passion to put aside. In my own case, the want of connection could not be so great an evil to my friend as to me. But there were other causes of repugnance. Whoa, repugnance. Causes which, though still existing and existing to an equal degree in both instances, I had myself endeavoured to forget, because they were not immediately before me. These causes must be stated, though briefly. Stated, I said stand. These causes must be stated, though briefly. The situation of your mother's family, though objectionable, was nothing in comparison to that total want of propriety so frequently, so almost uniformly betrayed by herself, by your 3 younger sisters, and occasionally even by your father. Pardon me, it pains me to offend you. He loves her so much. Oh my gosh, okay. But amidst your concern for the defects of your nearest relations, and your displeasure at this representation of them, let it give you consolation to consider that, to have conducted yourselves so as to avoid any share of the like censure, is to praise no less generally bestowed on you and your elder sister, than it is honourable to the sense and disposition of both. You guys are doing good and your family sucks, I think. I will only say farther. I will only say farther that from what passed that evening my opinion of all parties was confirmed, and every inducement heightened which could have led me before to preserve my friend from what I esteemed a most unhappy connection. Yeah, to you, but not to Mr. Bingley. He seemed fine, and he didn't even notice most of the stuff that you're talking about. Mr. Bingley was so enraptured with freaking Jane that he didn't even notice most of it, and you were just being really observant because you're not in love with Jane. But you are in love with Elizabeth, by golly. He left Netherfield for London on that following day, as you, I am certain, remember, with the design of soon returning. The part which I acted is now to be explained. His sister's uneasiness had been equally excited with my own. Our coincidence of feeling was soon discovered, and alike sensible that no time was to be lost in detaching their brother. We shortly resolved in joining him directly in London. Caroline Bingley and Mr. Darcy were like, dude, this is bad. They were both like, yeah, bro. This is bad. We gotta put a stop to this. It's foul. Terrible. We accordingly went, and there I readily engaged in the office of pointing out to my friend the certain evils of such a choice. Evils? That's such a heavy word. Your family's embarrassing, and that's evil. Whoa. I described and enforced them earnestly, but however this remonstrance might have staggered or delayed his determination, I do not suppose that it would ultimately have prevented the marriage, had it not been seconded by the assurance that I hesitated not in giving of your sister's indifference. Because they both thought it was Mr. Bingley. Said, okay, fine. He had before believed her in returning his affection with sincere, if not equal regard, but Bingley has great natural modesty, with a stronger dependence on my judgment than on his own. To convince him, therefore, that he had decided himself was no very difficult point. Oh, he had deceived himself. I see, it had to come from him. He deceived himself. Okay. To persuade him against returning into Hertfordshire, when that conviction had been given, was scarcely the work of a moment. Okay. I cannot blame myself for having done thus much. There is but one part of my conduct in the whole affair on which I do not reflect with satisfaction. It is that I condescended to adopt the measures of art so far as to conceal from him your sister's being in town. Okay, he concealed her from being... I see. I knew it myself, as it was known to Miss Bingley, but her brother is even yet ignorant of it. That they might have met without ill consequence is perhaps probable, but his regard did not appear to me enough extinguished for him to see her without some danger. He's still in love with her. Perhaps this concealment, this disguise was beneath me. It is done, however, and it was done for the best. On this subject I have nothing more to say, no other apology to offer. If I have wounded your sister's feelings, it was unknowingly done, and though the motives which governed me may to you very naturally appear insufficient, I have not yet learnt to condemn them. With respect to that other more weighty accusation of having injured Mr. Wickham, I can only refute it by laying before you the whole of his connection with my family. Yes, please, I would love to hear it. Of what he has particularly accused me, I am ignorant, but of the truth of what I shall relate, I can summon more than one witness of undoubted veracity. Mr. Wickham is the son of a very respectable man, who had for many years the management of all the Pemberley estates, and whose good conduct in the discharge of his trust naturally inclined my father to be of service to him. Okay. And on George Wickham, who was his godson, his kindness was therefore liberally bestowed. My father supported him at school and afterwards at Cambridge, most important assistance, as his own father, always poor from the extravagance of his wife, would have been unable to give him a gentleman's education. So Darcy's father gave Wickham a gentleman's education. They went to Cambridge. He went to Cambridge. My father was not only fond of this young man's society, whose manners were always engaging, right? He had also the highest opinion of him, and hoping the church would be his profession, intended to provide for him in it. As for myself, it is many, many years since I first began to think of him in a very different manner. Okay. The vicious propensities, the want of principle, which he was careful to guard from the knowledge of his best friend, could not escape the observation of a young man of nearly the same age with himself, and who had opportunities of seeing him in unguarded moments, which Mr. Darcy could not have. Mr. Darcy's dad, Mr. Darcy. Here again I shall give you pain, to what degree you only can tell. But whatever may be the sentiments which Mr. Wickham has created, a suspicion of the nature shall not prevent me from unfolding his real character. It adds even another motive. My excellent father died about 5 years ago, and his attachment to Mr. Wickham was to the last so steady that in his will he particularly recommended it to me to promote his advancement in the best manner that his profession might allow, and if he took orders, desired that a valuable family living might be his as soon as it became vacant. There was also a legacy of £1,000. His own father did not long survive mine, and within half a year from these events, Mr. Wickham, George Wickham's dad, or George Wickham, wrote to inform, Mr. Wickham, the Mr. Wickham, wrote to inform me that, having finally resolved against taking orders, he hoped I should not think it unreasonable for him to expect some more immediate pecuniary advantage. We know what pecuniary means. It's a financial transaction. I learned that through this book. Pecuniary advantage in lieu of the preferment by which he could not be benefited. He had some intention, he added, of studying law, and I must be aware that the interest of £1,000 would be a very insufficient support therein. I rather wished than believed him to be sincere, but at any rate was perfectly ready to accede to his proposal. I knew that Mr. Wickham ought not to be a clergyman. The business was therefore soon settled. He resigned all the claim to assistance in the church, were it possible that he could ever be in a situation to receive it, and accepted in turn £3,000. Okay, I'm getting a little lost, but somehow he got £3,000. All connection between us seemed now dissolved. Okay, so he took the money and left? I thought too ill of him to invite him to Pemberley or admit his society in town. In town I believed he chiefly lived, but his studying the law was a mere pretense, and being now free from all restraint, his life was a life of idleness and dissipation. So he wasn't actually studying law, he just said that he was studying law to get more money, I think. For about 3 years I heard little of him, but on the decease of the incumbent of the living which had been designed for him, he applied to me again by letter for the presentation. Okay. So right when he heard that he gets money, he wrote. Okay. His circumstances, he assured me, and I had no difficulty in believing it, were exceedingly bad. He had found the law a most unprofitable study. Okay. And was now absolutely resolved on being ordained if I would present him to the living in question, of which he trusted there could be little doubt, as he was well assured that I had no other person to provide for, and I could not have forgotten my revered father's intention. So now he said, I am going back to the church, and now I want that money. Okay. You will hardly blame me for refusing to comply with his entreaty, or for resisting every repetition to it. His resentment was in the proportion to the distress of his circumstances, and he was doubtless as violent in his abuse of me to the others as in reproaches to myself. After this period, every appearance of acquaintance was dropped. How he lived I know not, but last summer he was again most painfully obtruded on my notice. I must now mention a circumstance which I would wish to forget myself, and which no obligation less than the present should induce me to unfold to any human being. Having said thus much, I feel no doubt of your secrecy. He's like trusting her with information in this humongous long letter. My sister, who is more than 10 years my junior, was left to the guardianship of my mother's nephew, Colonel Fitzwilliam, and myself. About a year ago, she was taken from school in establishment formed for her in London, and last summer she went to the lady who presided over it, to Ramsgate, and thither also went Mr. Wickham, undoubtedly by design, for there proved to have been a prior acquaintance between him and Mrs. Young, in whose character we were most unhappily deceived, and by her connivance? Oh, I don't know this word either. Connivance, and by her connivance and aid. I just don't know what it means. Hold on. Connivance. Connivance. What's it mean? Ooh, willingness to secretly allow or be involved in wrongdoing, especially an immoral or illegal act.
Connivance.
Oh, connivance. Oh, conniving. Oh, I'm just reading it wrongly. Her connivance. She was conniving. Okay. Mrs. Young. Where does it say her name? My sister had a year to establish in London. Last she went to summer. And at last summer she went with the lady who presided. That must be Mrs. Young. Okay. What Not acquainted between him and Mrs. Young, in whose character we were most unhappily deceived. Okay, I see. And by her connivance and aid, he so far recommended himself to Georgiana, Mr. Darcy's sister, Georgiana Darcy, whose affectionate heart retained a strong impression of his kindness to her as a child, that she was persuaded to believe herself in love and to consent to an elopement. Georgiana was going to elope with Wickham. She was then but 15, which must be her excuse. She was just dumb and young and in love, I guess. And after stating her imprudence, I am happy to add that I owed the knowledge of it to herself. She found out herself, or she stopped it herself. That's cool. I joined them unexpectedly a day or two before the intended elopement, and then Georgiana, unable to support the idea of grieving and offending a brother whom she almost looked up to as a father, acknowledged the whole to me. You may imagine what I felt and how I acted. Regard for my sister's credit and feelings prevented any public exposure, but I wrote to Mr. Wickham, who left the place immediately, and Mrs. Young was of course removed from her charge. Okay. Darcy found out about it. Georgiana is safe, and Mrs. Young is no longer a part of her life. This is good. Mr. Wickham's chief object was unquestionably my sister's fortune, which is £30,000. But I cannot help supposing that the hope of revenging himself on me was a strong inducement. His revenge would have been complete indeed. And I think in the movie he said that Wickham knew that once Wickham found out that he wasn't going to get any of that fortune, he called it off. But I don't know if that's what it says in the book. Let's see what £30,000 is. £30,000 from Regency era worth today. 4 million. Okay. Oh my God. £30,000 in 1860, which is not during this time. In purchasing power of about 4 million. $4,661,537. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. I get it. I mean, Wickham's just trying to I get it. Yikes. This, madame, is a faithful madam. Madame. Okay, hold on. Let me just see, because I have been asking this question, madam, pronunciation. Pronunciation.
Madam.
Madam. And then with the E on the end must be madame.
Madame.
Madame. Okay, madam. This, madam, is a faithful narrative of every event in which we have been concerned together. And if you do not absolutely reject it as false, you will, I hope, acquit me henceforth of cruelty toward Mr. Wickham. I know not in what manner, under what form of falsehood he had imposed on you, but his success is not perhaps to be wondered at. Ignorant as you previously were of everything concerning either, detection could not be in your power, and suspicion certainly not in your inclination. You just heard what you heard, and I would have hated me too. You may possibly wonder why all this was not told to you last night, but I was not then master enough of myself. Ugh. Right. It's like you don't want to say things too harshly and in a bad manner. You want to be the master of yourself, but it is leaving people like, what the heck? I was not then master enough of myself to know what could or ought to be revealed. For the truth of everything were here related, I can appeal more particularly to the testimony of Colonel Fitzwilliam, who, from our near relationship and constant intimacy, and still more as one of the executors of my father's will, has been unavoidably acquainted with every particular of these transactions. If your abhorrence of me should make my assertions valueless, you cannot be prevented by the same cause from confiding in my cousin. And that there may be the possibility of consulting him, I shall endeavour to find some opportunity of putting this letter in your hands in the course of the morning. I will only add, God bless you, Fitzwilliam Darcy. Oh, that's where we see his name, Fitzwilliam Darcy. He didn't say etc. or anything, Fitzwilliam Darcy. That's very cool indeed. God bless you. They did like meet at church. They like go to church all the time. Wow. Okay, heavy letter, lots revealed. We're going to take a little moment to breathe. We're going to take a little moment to absorb all this new information that Elizabeth just got. And we'll see you back here next time for another installment of Emily's Corner reading Pride and Prejudice. And ta-ta, happy reading, everybody.